Scientists have developed something that could help translate thoughts into real-time speech.
And you
vote for me and I'll set you free.
Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Come together right now over me.
All right, folks, you certainly know what that theme song means by now. That's right. It's time for another episode of America Matters. I'm your host, Leo Zacky, with Eddie Floyd, and joining us today is the amazing Nathan Osmond. I'm so glad.
Hello.
I'm so glad you're back with us today, Nathan. It's amazing.
So good to be back with you, Leo.
I know you've got a lot of to tell us. You've been all over the country. You've been in Boston recently, so you've got some stories. But before we jump into any of that, I want to just give a congratulations to Alexander Ovechkin becoming the next. Well, he is the NHL's all-time leading scorer. He scored his 895th goal yesterday against the New York Islanders there on Long Island, and he's done it. He has passed the great one, Wayne Gretzky, and will continue to put biscuits in the basket and pad those stats as his career continues. He is a tremendous hockey player, and it's amazing to see a feat like that take place, especially with the evolution that has taken place in the NHL, the way goaltending is, the way the game is played. I mean, it's an amazing feat, and he has achieved it. So congratulations to him. And anyway, I wanted to share that with everybody. It's a big deal. But anyways, getting back into the world of, America Matters. Nathan,
yes.
Tell everybody where you've been, what you've been doing.
Gosh.
You've got
I tell you,
stuff to share.
Been staying so busy, but this weekend was a lot of fun. I was doing an event in Boston, but I flew in on a red eye. I landed just before 6 a.m. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go walk the footsteps of our founding fathers. And I went up there to Breeds Hill, up to Bunker Hill, where the shot heard round the world was fired. And I started my morning there. And I tell you, I saw everything from the Old North Church. I went up in that tower, walking on the same stairs that 250 years ago this month. Those guys went up there and hung those lanterns as signal lights to tell us whether the British were coming for land or sea by the town tonight. You know, the old Longfellow poem. And I memorized that in third grade. So it just brought it to life. I got to see Paul Revere's, grave. I got to see John Hancock's grave. Benjamin Franklin's parents, Mother Goose, you name it, they were all there. I saw a bunch of them, Samuel Adams. It was just so cool to go visit our founding fathers and get to see where they worked. I went up to the old State House. I stood right there at the balcony where the very first reading of the Declaration of Independence was read, to the Bostonians. The very first place it was read was out in Worcester, Massachusetts. I stood right there, right where Isaiah Thomas read that. But I'm a history buff, and I just absolutely love to go see these places. I went to the Old South Meeting House. I got to see where they gathered before the Boston Tea Party, where the miracle that happened in the Old South Meeting House in 1746 took place. That picture right there is just right below where the bells are in the Old North Church Tower there. You can see that round thing. That's where the clock used to be. But, it was so neat to be in there. On the 18th of April in 75, hardly a man is now alive who remembers that famous day and year. He said to his friends, if the British march by land or sea by the town tonight, hang a lantern aloft aloft in the belfry arch of the North Church Tower as a signal light. One if by land and two if by sea, and I on the opposite shore will be, ready to ride and spread the alarm to every Middlesex village and farm for the country folk to be up and to arm. It was so good. But I also visited William Dawes's grave because he was the other Paul Revere. You know, he doesn't get a lot of credit for that, but he also was stopped by the British. They thought he was a dead man. But you know what? He survived it. So did Paul Revere. I went to Paul's house. I got to see all sorts of incredible places out there. You're showing some great pictures here of that trip, but it brought it all to life. You know what? I stopped and had lunch where the Kennedys used to always eat. It was called Ye Old Union Oyster House. And you know what? This is the oldest restaurant in America. But this was also a newspaper printing. The Massachusetts Spy used to be printed there. Isaiah Thomas worked there. And this is where the first whisperings of an American Revolution were going through. The British, the Redcoats were like, hey, have you heard this? It's just down the street, right there by Faneuil Hall, just by the old State House, right where the Boston Massacre took place. I saw all these locations, but I just love history. So I had a fantastic weekend. It was awesome.
Well, it looks amazing from all the photos that we've got that we're putting up here on the screen now. Folks, if you want to watch and see any of these photos, you can always go to the Facebook page, America Matters, or you can go to any one of our streaming platforms. You can go to Zacky Radio on YouTube. You can go to Zacky Radio on Rumble. There's a whole bunch of stuff out there, but these are great photos. Dude, you had looks like a really great trip to Boston. I love that
beautiful day too. It was gorgeous, just the perfect weather. And you follow this little red line all throughout Boston, all throughout the streets, and it guides you to all these locations. There's so much to see there. There's a jacket by John Hancock. He wore that, and there's his own writing right there. He's buried there at Granary Park, where the burial ground there, and it's just amazing to see who's in there. Samuel Adams is buried there. The victims of the Boston Massacre. Just so many great people from history. Signers of the Declaration of Independence are in there, and it's just amazing to go visit and realize, these were young guys. We think of them as old people. The oldest was old Benjamin Franklin. He wasn't even that old, but these were young guys, like in their 20s, that were doing all of this to help establish and build a nation. The miracles that took place even in the Old South Meeting House, because back in 1746, 30 years before we were declared an independent nation, I told this to the tour guide. She didn't even know this story. I said, listen, I got to tell the people here this story. This is why I came here. 25% of England at that time was living here in the colonies. And so France was at war with England. They knew that an attack on the colonies was an attack on England, and they were on their way. Duke d'Anville had been given orders to burn Boston to ashes, and they were on their way. 10,000 troops, frigates of war, black powder, cannons. They were coming to destroy Boston. So they gathered that day, and they all walked into church in the sunlight. Well, Thomas Prince, the Reverend, offered the most powerful prayer that day, praying that God would sink their proud frigates beneath them and to save their lives. And when he was praying, they noticed that this wind started to kick up around that church. It blew so hard that it sounded like people were pounding on the windows. It blew so hard, Leo Zacky, that it actually rang the bell 2 separate times in that church. Bong, bong, and the people could hear it. And nobody was even up there. And they said, we hear thy voice, O Lord. The bell tolls for the death of our enemies. To thee be the glory, Lord. Amen and amen. And guess what? They sent a ship out to find out where the French were. Well, the news they brought back was almost too miraculous to believe. They said that wind carried out to sea and carried a pestilence with it. Thousands died at sea. Thousands more were so sick they couldn't even stand up on their feet. Duke d'Anville says we're being destroyed by an invisible enemy. And like a coward, he ordered poison and killed himself. Well, guess what? His vice admiral is going, I can't return to France like this. So he drew his sword, shoved it through his own heart, and he killed himself. And France returned mission unaccomplished. Why do we not hear these stories in our schools? This is a true story. In fact, you know what? The best part of this story, the cherry on top, is there was a young 10-year-old John Adams that was in that congregation that day who said, and he wrote it in his own writing, it was on that day that I became a patriot. Is that not an awesome story?
That's incredible.
Yeah,
This is the stuff they need to teach kids. This is the stuff that's been missing from the history books for a long time. Nathan, you are a wealth of knowledge, my friend, but that comes from experience, that comes from travel. But we we got to take our first break. And when we do, I want to hear more about this. So we're going to take our first break. I'm Leo Zacky. Joining us today is Nathan Osmond with Eddie Floyd. We'll be right back.
Or 790-8255. Now back to the show.
All right, folks, we are back with America Matters. I'm Leo Zacky, and joining me today is Nathan Osmond. We got Eddie Floyd there in the studio.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It's just great to have him on here. He's been telling us his awesome adventure there in Boston and giving us some great history and some awesome
Thank you.
stories that come with it. So,
Well, there's so much to learn. You know, I remember going over to England and walking in Westminster Abbey and seeing the grave of Sir Winston Churchill, you know, and just thinking what he said, that those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Yeah, he's buried right there in that church. But I just love to learn from history. There's so much, and history can be messy. We're writing history right now. And what will our children and their children say about us? You know, it was John Adams that talked about how he studied warfare and all these things so that his sons may study mathematics and English, and then they studied those things so that their children can learn to study art and tapestry and all those things. We always have to, sometimes we inconveniently have to study things we don't necessarily want to. We have to stand for things and fight for things that we didn't necessarily want to. I thought about, you know, what it would have been like as I stood there on Breed's Hill, on Bunker Hill, you know, when they said, "Don't fire till you see the white in their eyes." These guys knew they were going to die. I
Oh,
even
yeah.
went down to the crypt just underneath the Old North Church. They got over 1,100 bodies in there, and some of them were British soldiers. Some of these were colonels and generals in that battle there in Lexington and Concord. You know, but if our children don't hear these stories, they're gonna die with those people. You know, I want to keep our founding fathers and their sacrifices alive. I talk a lot about it on my podcast, Achieving Awesomeness Now. And it's now even a radio show, which is out there too. But we're producing a big event coming up here on May 16th to the 18th in Utah called Achieving Awesomeness Now Summit. And it's going to be amazing. I'm bringing in 12 different speakers. We're going to talk about all sorts of great topics, but just trying to help people to step into their greatness and inspire others to do the same. There's only about 16 tickets left to this thing. It's going to be amazing. So if anyone wants tickets, all they have to do is email achievingawesomenessnow@gmail.com. We'll send them all the information, but that's May 16th through the 18th in Utah, Midway at the Homestead Resort. It's going to be amazing. And we've got Susan Cox Powell Foundation as our main title sponsor. We've got Take Off Pounds Sensibly, Tops Club Inc. They're going to be there. It's just going to be great. We're going to talk about health, wealth. We're talking about history. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about personalities. We're going to talk about how to lose weight, all the stuff that helps us to be our very best selves. But I'm definitely going to share a lot of history lessons that I love and the lessons that we can take away from them, just like the one I just shared.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think this is a great opportunity for folks to just get out there and meet other great people that are motivated and want to just better themselves, which everybody should probably want to do that. I don't see why they wouldn't.
Oh, yeah. My father and mother are going to be there, speakers. I've got cousins that are coming up. We're doing a Nathan Osmond concert. We're swimming at the Crater. We're going to have a Sunday devotional. It's just going to be like the most, bring a box of tissues, because this is going to be life-changing. You will not be the same person walking out of there as the person that walked in there. And that's the whole mission, is every day to become better, stronger, and to help others do the same, because that's the whole point about awesomeness. What is awesomeness? I had a chance to, when I was in New Haven, Connecticut, to go see where Eli Whitney was buried. What I didn't expect, though, was right next to him was a guy named Mr. Webster. You remember him? He's the guy that wrote those dictionaries, and he never defined the word awesomeness in that dictionary. We define that. We as a nation, we as individuals, we define what it means to be successful or to be awesome. And so everyone's going to come in there with a different definition, but I want them to create clarity for their lives. I want them to have a vision for their lives. They were fearfully and magnificently made in the image of their creator. And I tell people, don't be proud of who you are, be proud of whose you are. And if that doesn't give you chills, I don't know what will. But we are not told about our possibilities, about our talents and what we can accomplish. We're told more about our limitations and what we can't do in this world. And when you're growing up with a negative, you're going to continue to go that direction if somebody doesn't steer you in the right way. I'm grateful for mentors like my parents who are going to be there. People are going to be able to talk to them. My father's had MS for 38 years, but it does not have him. You see? And so attitude in life is so important. So if you're struggling right now, if you're just trying to find some direction, some vision for your life, we encourage you guys, email Denise Copel. Her email is achievingawesomenessnow@gmail.com. Get information about this event, May 16th to the 18th. It's called Achieving Awesomeness Now Summit. It's going to be life-changing.
That's fantastic. Well, make sure you go and check that out. It sounds like a lot of fun. Eddie, you going to be there? Eddie?
Is his mic on? There's my brother.
There you go. Hey, brother, I want to thank you for our phone conversation last night. We finally figured out how to make the screen bigger, but I found out something. The bigger I get, the uglier I get, brother. Anyway, everybody knows Nathan Osmond. Did you pick up some inspiration for new songs when you were there?
I sure did. You know what? I've been thinking about all sorts of things we can do. I wrote a song not long ago with a friend of mine. It was during COVID that, as our nation was so torn apart. We're supposed to be the United States of America. So my friend Camilla Morrison and I wrote this song called All In. And what a message this is. You've heard like the song Come Together and those songs. I wanted to write a song about coming together. And so we wrote this song that says, sick of all this madness. Every day it's the same old news. It's time for massive action, not mass distractions. It's time we face the truth. Open up your eyes to see what's really going on. When they try to divide us, it will only unite us. Let this be our song. And then it says, all in. We can't make it till we're all in. It takes everybody. Hear the message. Throw your fears away. Who tell me, are you all in? Come on, everybody, fall in one by one. A new tomorrow starts with us today.
Wow.
And I wrote that in about 30 minutes. But it talked about, tempers fly and statues fall. There's chaos in the streets, cities burning, people yearning for peace and unity. There's no room for hatred. Put our differences aside, hand in hand across the land. Let us all unite. And that's the message of that song. Music is healing, music is powerful. And I think we have the obligation as artists to utilize our talents for good, because I think we're going to have to report when we get back to the other side what we did with those gifts.
I absolutely agree. Sharing that talent, those gifts, it's getting people to hear that. That's so important, Nathan. I'm glad that you're finding inspiration everywhere you go, and you're sharing that with folks.
Well, thank you. You know what? I love doing what I do as not only an entertainer and speaker and everything else, and radio show host and podcaster, but also mortgage man. I just want to let Leo Zacky know. I mean, come on, future governor of California here. I am officially licensed in your state with Osmond Home Loans, NMLS number 2043092, equal housing lender. Come on, baby. Always can play it. But you know what? I love that we're helping people live the American dream. That's what I was doing in Boston as I was teaching people how to invest in real estate. Our founding fathers loved real estate. In fact, you couldn't even vote back in the day unless you were a landowner, fully invested in this country. And I love that about real estate. But the cool part is right now, what's the biggest complaint people have about the market? Interest rates, right? That's the number one thing we hear, especially as a loan officer in 8 states. But let me tell you this, we're helping people in California, in Arizona, Utah, Idaho, Colorado, Texas, Florida, and Alaska to save 1% on their interest rate the whole first year at no cost to them, paid for by their favorite lender, Nathan Osmond. Isn't that cool? See, so we're helping people live the American dream by investing in their future. I hate the word rent. It's like a 4-letter word and a musical. If you want rent, go to Broadway. We want to show you how to become an owner and own a piece of the rock. So if you guys have any questions at all, you want to talk to me directly, all my contact information is on my website, which is osmondhomeloans.com. Check it out. I'd love to be a good resource for you. And even if it's for your children or your friends that are looking to buy or refinance or anything else, we can do investor loans. I'm helping a lot of our veterans out there through the VA. But I just want to tell everybody about these savings. This thing is going to go to the end of June. So if you're looking to buy anytime soon, make sure you go to osmondhomeloans.com and save 1% on your interest rate the whole first year. It's pretty powerful.
That is a lot. That's very powerful considering the way today's market is looking. And we'll definitely have to talk about today's market. This is a bear market. We're entering bear market territory. We'll have to talk about that.
Got a lot going on. Got a lot going on right now. And I just love that. I just want to help people understand, though, if you can buy right now, do it. I mean, you got Dave Ramsey out there saying right now is the best time in the next 5 years to buy. And this is Mr. Conservative. So why is he saying that? Well, because he says, don't not buy the house. He says, buy the house. And if interest rates come down, refinance, close quote. And here's Mr. Conservative saying that because you can't save as much as your house is going to earn. Right now, especially right now, seller financing is a big thing. We got a thing on Instagram called Dio Funding Group, which is amazing. And what it is we've got rent-to-own programs all across the country. We're helping people get in. I'm using seller financing. We're helping the 10X leverage investors' money. We had a gentleman bring $200,000 in last June. Guess what we did? We turned it into a $2 million real estate portfolio in a month. You know what's happening here in Utah right now? The Olympics are coming back. They're projecting Salt Lake City to double in size in the next 9 years.
Wow.
So what do you think might be a good market to invest in? I'm just saying.
The Salt Lake market for sure.
Oh, yeah. You look at Texas, Frisco, Texas. Universal Studios is building a new park there. How many people knew about that? I love to keep my ear to the ground. Look at Kansas City. What's going on there? There's things going on down in Alabama that people are like, what? St. Louis area. There's a lot of cool niche markets and pockets, and it just depends what you do in the market. So if anyone's out there who want to know what's going on in the real estate world and want to talk to me, like I said, give me a call, osmondhomeloans.com. Whether we talk about investing, whether we talk about buying yourself your own home and saving your family the money that you need to save. Oh, I tell you, I got some other cool stuff. I could talk all day on this stuff, but
I know you could, Nathan.
Bro, let's talk about what you're doing, man.
Well, we will, but we got to take our bottom of the hour break right now. When we do,
I knew I talked too much.
We love having you on, Nathan. You're a wealth of knowledge, and we really appreciate it. So when we get back, we got a couple of topics we got to cover.
You
I'm
got it.
Leo Zacky with Eddie Floyd. Joining us today is Nathan Osmond. We'll be right back.
Back to the show.
All right.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott.
What is going on? All right, we're back. We're back with America Matters. Anyways, I'm Leo Zacky with Eddie Floyd. We got Nathan Osmond here with us today, and
Right.
Eddie, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this bear market territory that we're entering.
I'm with you. Go ahead. Lead it off, Leo.
Sure. Well, the S&P 500 has dropped more than 20% from its February highs, and the Dow and NASDAQ are down as well,
Right.
routed by rising economic uncertainty. And much of that uncertainty comes from, well, the one word that everybody's been talking about, and that's tariffs.
Right.
President Donald Trump's latest trade moves have shaken investor confidence, and a sweeping new round of tariffs on Chinese imports has sent the shockwaves through global markets. The White House sees it as a long-term fix for trade imbalances.
You know, let me ask you this. President Trump defended the move, saying sometimes you have to take your medicine to fix something. He argues that tariffs are a correction to years of bad trade deals, adding, "We've been treated so badly by other countries." This is a quote by him. "We've been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen."
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God! Yeah, are you kidding me? He's even threatening to raise tariffs another 50% if China doesn't scale back its retaliation. So big tech names like Apple, Nvidia, Microsoft, they've taken major hits, and investors are nervous. And hedge fund manager Bill Ackman has issued a stark warning, calling the current path an economic nuclear winter unless these tariffs are paused.
Amen. Let's shift, if you don't mind, to something that maybe Nathan will chime in on after you speak, Leo, and that's the housing market. Could these tariffs sometimes help our market?
Well,
Absolutely. I mean, there's talk about because of what he's doing, the interest rates will come down. You look at the bond market, and because of what he's doing, it is going to make our country stronger. Isn't it interesting too? I love what Warren Buffett had to say about this. Now, this works perfectly with real estate as well. He says, when people are greedy, be scared. When people are scared, be greedy. I would challenge you to see what Nancy Pelosi's doing in the stock market right now. I bet she's making bank.
bet she is too.
Because that's the thing is that if you're getting your news from the news, you're too late as an investor. I'll just tell you that. You have to be actively involved in your investments if you're going to succeed, and you have to go where the rich people go and do what they do. Right now, when chaos erupts, it's just like this guy I was on an airplane with. He owned like 15 Burger Kings. We were flying into Miami where their headquarters are, and he said to me at this time, he says, Nathan, where's the most money being made in the world right now? And I said, I didn't want to give him the wrong answer. I said, that's a great question. Where? See what I did there? I turned it around on him, let him be the expert. And he goes, think about it. Iraq. Now, this was during the Iraq war. He says, wherever there's chaos, somebody's making money. So you can complain and do what everybody else does and lose your shorts in the market, or you can do what rich people do and profit from it. Wherever there's chaos, there's huge opportunity. So as a nation, what we ought to be looking at is what is actually transpiring and ask yourself, how is this going to help our nation? And what am I doing that the masses are doing? Because if you want to be broke, 97% of Americans are going into retirement at lower levels of income than they had in their best working years. Something's not working. They're working sometimes 2 or 3 jobs. But I have learned as we've done a lot of these financial trainings and conferences like I did in Boston this weekend, that there's no such thing as a bad market. It's what you do within that market. I'm grateful to see ourselves trying to fight back for America first for once. Isn't it nice that we're trying to be fair and balanced in our trades? Now, I'm not an economic genius, but I like to see what's happening. I
Well,
like
what's
change.
Yeah, well, Nathan, what's happening is, Donald Trump has a plan to
Mhm.
get the interest rates to come down to refinance $9 trillion of our national
Absolutely.
debt. And so, yeah, we're going to feel the pain, but this pain is being put on us because of the poor decisions that have been made by
Mhm.
past past presidencies, not Trump's, but previous administrations that have absolutely ran up the tab here on the United States.
Yeah, and you just mentioned some big, big companies that are nervous. Well, guess what? A lot of those companies were created during the Great Depression. So sometimes during the hardest times in our nation, the most creative, innovative ideas come forth, and amazing creative and wealth building, generational wealth is created during the hardest economic times. So the question then becomes is what am I doing with my money? We're focused on the economy. I tell people to focus on their economy, because you are in control of what you do with your spend. And if you sit here and blame everything on what the president does or what Nancy Pelosi did or this president did, that's on you, right? That's zero control. I always say that the best way to create not only get rich quickly is to count all your blessings, but number 2 is go where the wealthy people go, do what they do, invest in your education. It pays the biggest dividends of all.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that could be a trade school as well. I mean, just getting knowledge is very important.
Absolutely.
But speaking of all this trade stuff, I wanted to move on and talk about what's going on with beef. Um,
Yes.
It's what's
so,
for dinner.
Yeah. Beef, if you would, Leo.
yeah. So Howard Lutnick, a well-known guy in the finance world and someone who's been defending some of the Trump administration's tougher trade stances, especially tariffs, has been, well, talking about, well, why isn't the European Union taking American beef? Well, there's some reasons for that, and I don't know if Howard Lutnick's the best when it comes to this stuff, but he's been putting on a little bit of a show. So we've got a clip here I wanted to play for you guys. Jeff, you got that queued up? So let's get that video going, if you don't mind, Jeff.
That being said, here's a clip of Howard Lutnick, who was going around the media to defend Trump's tariffs to some extent, and listen what he said about America's big, beautiful beef and why the EU won't take it.
I mean, the European Union won't take chicken from America. They won't take lobsters from America. They hate our beef because our beef is beautiful and theirs is weak.
It's beautiful beef, and you got the weak beef. I understand that billionaire financial guy turned Trump administration guy, Howard Lutnick, is trying to do his Trump cosplay where he basically just pretends to be Trump using his lingo and sounding like him. But let's be honest. Look it up. The EU doesn't not use big, beautiful American beef because we have the biggest, best beef. And I'm not saying we don't have good beef. I think real ranchers in America do have some of the best beef. But if you look it up, we use these weird antimicrobial washes such as chlorine and also feed our chickens antibiotics, and it doesn't hold up to the standards of the EU. Most people who travel abroad notice that the food is healthier in other countries because of the lack of preservatives, and in many cases better standards when it comes to meat. It's not to say we don't have big beautiful beef, but once again Howard's just kind of lying there. I just wanted to include this in the clip because I thought it was interesting, and I try to call it like I see it, not just play partisan politics like most people. With that being said, here's a clip of Howard.
Wow.
Right?
Movie.
Good clip, Leo.
So the European Union doesn't want to take our meat because it's not because it's lower quality. It's just there's things in it that they don't approve of, like antibiotics and hormones in some cases, and antimicrobial washes like chlorine, and also PAA, which is powerful antimicrobial. I forget what it's called, but we would use that on our products too. It's to help just bring down any contaminants, and but according to studies, it says it's safe to use. So in very small amounts, like less than it's like 50 parts per million in water when it's being applied. But it's stuff that the European Union says they don't want to have it in there. So we just have lower standards than them. Really, is what it comes down to.
Right.
I agree with that. Yeah, there's a magician that was in town in Branson and had a bunch of lions in his show, and he started feeding them some of the chicken from the local grocery store. Well, guess what started happening? The hair in their mane started falling out because of what was in the chicken, the hormones and all these chemicals that we put into the foods. It's so hard to find just food.
Yeah, but it's not everybody. Not everybody does that stuff. I mean, my family, we led the way in antibiotic free. We helped pioneer that. We were the largest turkey producers in the nation when we shut our doors, unfortunately. So I mean, let's break it down. I mean, yes, there are like PAA and chlorine washed chicken. That's a thing. It's safe and approved by the USDA, but the European Union doesn't want it because they don't trust that final rinse. And look, they have their reasons for it. I mean, look,
not just meat, it's also lots of food too.
Yes, but the best thing that anybody can do when preparing food is to cook it to the proper temperature. That's the best thing that you can do. Always do that. It'll take care of any issues, any diseases or whatever. And obviously don't handle raw stuff and then go and touch cooked stuff or stuff that you're going to use on cooked stuff. I mean, just, basic stuff like that, for food safety, and you'll be all right. They add there's antibiotics that are put in food because apparently it helps with feed conversion, and that's just what folks have figured out. And look, you don't necessarily want to have all that stuff in there. It's not necessarily horrible, but I mean, there's still potential that you're consuming that because it's still in that flesh. So the European Union has their reasons, and we in America should hold ourselves to a higher standard. So I totally have to agree that we're not doing a good job. We have to make America healthy again.
Absolutely,
we can do a better job, but not everything that we do is this horrible thing that people are afraid of.
Yeah. No, I love the
overuse of antibiotics is a big problem. This is why we fought against it, because it can just help build more bacterial resistant strains of diseases out there, making it more difficult and more devastating when they infect our animals. So the overuse of antibiotics is another big problem. But Nathan, we got to take our last break here on
Got it.
America Matters. When we get back, we're going to continue the conversation. I'm Leo Zacky with Eddie Floyd, and joining us today is our guest, Nathan Osmond. We'll be right back. All right, folks, we're back with America Matters. I'm Leo Zacky with Eddie Floyd, and joining us today is the talented Nathan Osmond. We're so glad he's with us. He's been telling us about his adventures in Boston and around the country, and
Right.
so he's got his upcoming event there, May 16th in Midway, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of fun. There's only how many tickets left?
About 16 seats left. We got people coming all the way from England to come to this thing, and from
Wow.
Tennessee, from Florida, from Ohio, you name it. They're coming to Utah. Californians are coming too, and it's just we're gonna gather, and we're going to be so inspired and lifted up. It's going to be May 16th to the 18th. If you want tickets, go to email my manager. Her name is Denise, and her email is achievingawesomenessnow@gmail.com. This thing's going to sell out. We'd love for some of your listeners to be those last 16 guests. It's going to be incredible.
I think it would be great. I'd
Yeah.
love for folks to go. I wish I could be there.
I
Unfortunately,
wish you could be there. We're going to get you backstage to meet my uncle, though. Donnie Osmond wants to meet you.
I would love to. We could definitely set that up.
You get. I'll set it up for you.
That'd be awesome.
I'm a little bit country. He's a little bit rock and roll.
Then we're all going to get along just great. I'll bring it.
Amen.
Well,
Earlier today, Leo, you were discussing the $62 billion question. Explain that to Nathan, if you would.
Okay.
Yes. Well, Los Angeles has been wasting billions of dollars on, well, not helping the homeless. They call it helping. They're not doing that. They're doing a horrible job of just that. And uh, even for those outside the city, I mean, the amount of money spent, it's not helping.
No.
Despite this substantial investment, this crisis is continuing to worsen, and as a result, most of the funding from LASA, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, goes to something they call bridge housing.
Mm.
And here's a quick clip. We're going to dive a little bit, dives a bit deeper into that, and
Okay.
we'll talk about it afterwards here. Play that clip for us there, Jeff.
A searing audit has found that the city of LA has failed to properly track billions of dollars in homeless spending. No, this is wrong, because it's actually so much worse. And as usual, I got all the receipts. Let me show you. So, the majority of funding from LAHSA, LASA, the LA Homeless Services Authority, goes to something called bridge housing, okay? $320 million. Now, bridge housing is basically temporary housing that they've built to house people. Here's one that they've built in Venice Beach. Now let's check out the details. It cost them $8.6 billion to build this particular complex in Venice Beach. And most of that money, $5.6 million, came directly from the city. There are 154 beds in total, costing them $56,000 per bed. And this is what it looks like inside. Kind of looks like an office, except beds instead of desks. $56,000 to build one of these cubicles. Now, I'm not a construction expert, but this seems kind of sus. And on top of that, it's costing the city $3.4 million a year to operate this bridge housing, which is another $22,000 per bed. But where it gets even sketchier is who the city has contracted to operate this bridge housing. In this case, we have two nonprofits, PATH and SPY. Now, PATH, I've done a dive on them before, but they are the nonprofit that has collected tens of millions of dollars from the city to keep buildings vacant, buildings that were supposed to be used for shelter. Their CEO, Jennifer Hart-Dietz, makes nearly $400,000 a year, probably even more now. And here she is, ending homelessness with Gavin Newsom. Now, the other operator, SPY, which stands for Safe Place for Youth, is a nonprofit that focuses on youth homelessness, is run by this lady named Erica Hartman. Now, Erica Hartman, as it turns out, is a former board member for the LA Homeless Services Authority, and in fact, an active board member when this contract was given out. Now, that seems like a conflict of interest. So just like we have a revolving door.
Wow.
Wow.
How about that? That's pretty suspicious, huh?
Yeah, you better believe it, Leo. Great job on the video.
Right? Well, I mean, look, I find good stuff out there, and we have a great team that puts it together, and we can get it all out there to you guys.
Well, why do you think the left is so upset right now about Doge, about this Department of Government Efficiency? Because for so long, they have been robbing us blindly.
Yeah.
Not just them, but many politicians on the right as well. They are really cleaning house. And we need to run.
Absolutely. Nathan, it's a great example here is this woman who was on the board that passed this spending agreement for this company is now been hired on by the company that she passed the spending agreement for. It one hand washes the other. It's incredible how this all works.
Well, I think if you want to find the root of all the problems, you just follow the money. One of my favorite books says that the love of money is the root of all evil. And it's not money itself, but the love thereof. You know, you look at all the findings we found with Nancy Pelosi and her husband with insider trading. If it's illegal for one, it should be illegal for all. And there's a lot of dishonesty in our world going on. And I don't know, just the name SPY, I would be concerned about that. Nonprofit organization.
Nathan, I mean, the fact is that they are. I mean, you're in real estate. I mean, these kind of expenses are outrageous, and based on what we saw in those images, I mean, it's literally like super low. What do they call it? Low security style. You know, communal housing situation where it's a big open room and they have these half walls and these little cubicles with a single bed in it. That's $56,000 each one of those little cubes.
Yeah.
They spent $8.6 million to build this facility out, and that basically breaks down to the cost of $56 a bed at 154 beds. They spent $8.6 million housing 154 people.
Wow.
This is the amount of money that is being wasted on this bureaucratic nightmare, because there's money laundering at every step of the way.
Yes.
They don't like this Doge stuff, and they don't like people doing deep dives and exposing the fraud, because it's taking money out of their pockets. And the problem is you have these useful idiots out there that are getting mad and fighting against the kind of change that we, the people, absolutely have the right to know about and want to prevent the waste, because we want results. But
look how much money Gavin Newsom spent on that short amount of railroad track. You know what I'm saying? This is happening in California. That's why we're supporting you, Leo Zacky.
Well, I appreciate that.
Running for office. I've been in Newsom's office, and you know what? I can't stand the guy. It's nothing about him personally, but his politics are yucky. It's nasty, it's ugly, and with these fires and the lack of leadership, I love California. It was my home when I was a baby.
Yeah, well, I'd love to give you a reason to come and move back here. I mean, now that
I'm coming back to San Diego to teach a real estate class coming up in just a few weeks. And so I'm excited to get back to Cali. But California is what leads the rest of the nation. What happens there typically spreads across the country. So they're corrupt in California. Just wait. The rest of it's coming to all of us.
We're here to root out all that corruption.
Got to root that out, Leo, and that's why I'm excited to vote for you. If I could, because
look, your endorsement is your endorsement is fantastic, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that, Nathan. But the worst part about this $8.6 million spend in just Venice for the 154 homeless people that are there, it's going to cost $3.4 million a year just to operate it. That's another $22,000 a bed.
Wow.
So the waste is outrageous. So LASA's in serious hot water, and guess what? They're being sued, and they ought to be. Cal Matters, a nonprofit news outlet, took them to court for hiding internal shelter incident reports. And these documents are about serious stuff: deaths, assaults, medical emergencies inside these shelters. So they're not being run very well. And LASA has tried blocking it by saying, well, we have attorney-client privilege and this and that. But the reality is that most of these reports weren't even written by the lawyers. They were done so by the contractors. So that excuse doesn't hold up. And in the end, LASA agreed to settle. And they'll now release 175 reports every 2 weeks until they turn over about 5,000. And so it's a big win for transparency and public accountability. But, I mean, at that rate, it's going to take years.
Yep.
To get all these reports turned out. That's the thing. It's that slow drip of information that they're letting it out because it's so bad. I mean, they're just doing such a horrible job. But look, these audits found delayed payments, missing money, and poor tracking of how these funds were used. And one audit flagged $5 million in advances that were completely unaccounted for. Folks, this is our money. This is our money, and they are lighting it on fire. But it's worse than that. They're just stealing it.
They're stealing your money.
So many different ways. People are getting rich off of your ignorance. And we cannot allow this to continue. They are taking advantage of you, of me, of we the people. It is unfair. It is unjust. And this behavior will stop when I am elected governor here in California in 2023. But I can't do it without your help and support. Folks, I need your help to get me there. Please go to leozacky.com. Donate if you can. Anything helps. $5, 500, 5,000, 30, 39,200, all whatever you can. It really makes a difference. Nathan, I really appreciate your endorsement. Thank you for that. And thank you to everybody for joining us today on American Matters. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon. So make sure you do. And don't forget, grab tickets for Nathan's event, May 16th to the 18th out there in Midway, Utah. Thanks again for joining us today, Nathan. It really means a lot. Have a great day, everyone.
See you later, brother.
See ya.